The following footage was recorded on Legendary, unless otherwise noted. Additionally, this series will build on topics covered in my original Hokie School of Halo, so if you haven't already watched that, I recommend you do so before proceeding. What's up, guys? My name is Hokie Bird, and welcome to... Oh, fuck, I'm dead already. Welcome to Hokie's School of Halo 2. Launched on November 9th, 2004 to almost universal critical acclaim, Halo 2 is considered by many to be the single greatest shooter on any console. It revolutionized multiplayer gameplay as we know it with the introduction of Xbox Live and is probably the sole reason for the service's success and continued existence today. Many consider Halo 2 to be their favorite game of the Halo saga, and some even consider it to be their favorite game of all time. However, Halo 2 is also rather infamous for another reason. Holy fuck nuggets, this game is hard. Yeah, Halo 2 stepped up the difficulty quite a bit from Halo Combat Evolved, but believe it or not, it wasn't intentional. About 2 months before Halo 2's launch, Bungie found out that they needed to reduce enemy numbers in all campaign encounters because the hardware back then couldn't handle what they were throwing at it. Now obviously when you have fewer enemies, the game becomes easier so long as all else is held constant. This meant that in order to make the game as difficult as they wanted it to be, they needed to make the enemies stronger and more dangerous. Unfortunately, when faced with an imposing deadline, Bungie had to make these changes quickly and didn't have the time to go back through the entire game and rebalance every enemy encounter with respect to the new difficulty settings. And the result is the hellish nightmare of a game that we know today.
Uh-oh. Hey, they're leaving the Athens.
Now, the basic combat tactics that I discussed in the first Hokie School of Halo all still apply here, that being cover, headshots, and weapon combos, but some of the specifics behind them have changed, as well as brand new mechanics that have been introduced, and that's what I want to cover today. Number 1. You are much weaker than ever before. Alright, let's start with the obvious. Despite the fancy new armor and apparently upgraded shielding system, the Chief is now about as strong as the wet tissue marines seen in the first Halo game. The best way of demonstrating this is with the very first combat encounter in the game. What I'm going to do is force Johnson off the turret and use it to mow down the enemies as they come through the door. Here it is on easy. On normal. Heroic. And finally, on Legendary. One of these things is not like the others. Whereas on Easy, Normal, and Heroic, you can take them all out without taking enough fire to even deplete your shields, on Legendary, you can't even take out a single Elite before you're killed. To even better demonstrate how much weaker you are on Legendary, compare these two clips of me just mindlessly running at the enemies and see how much quicker I get killed in Halo 2. To me, this is not an appropriate jump in difficulty from Heroic to Legendary. This is like attempting to play through Halo Combat Evolved on Legendary with only 1 bar of health at all times. And as a result, you die in this game very quickly, often in less than 1 second after the first shot hits you. And because of this, some of the checkpoints in this game are impassable if you're caught off guard. In fact, it seems that Bungie even realized this because they implemented a system that reverts you back to your second to last checkpoint if you die less than 5 seconds after respawning 5 times in a row. Speaking of dying quickly, Melee attacks now kill you instantly. Whereas in Halo Combat Evolved, you could withstand a melee from an elite, hunter, or combat form, often without even fully depleting your shield. This time around, they all kill you instantly. This pretty much kills all possibilities of close quarters combat, with only one exception. Elite's melee attacks are very easily dodged by circle strafing, and then you can use said circle strafe to get behind the elite and instantly assassinate him. Other than that, close quarters combat in Halo 2 will just get you killed. Number 2. Enemies are much stronger than ever before. Alright, this one's pretty obvious. Enemies are ridiculously tough this time around. Just try to take on a red elite with only a battle rifle and you'll see what I mean. But this even applies to enemies without shields. Grunts, jackals, drones, and flood combat forms can all absorb an absolutely insane amount of damage from any non-headshot or non-power weapon before they die. For example, look at how many shots this lone grunt can absorb from this magnum before he dies. This means that for the majority of the time that you're playing the game, you'll kill enemies with nothing but attacks that guarantee instant kills, such as headshots, grenade sticks, assassinations, and sword lunges against combat forms. And sadly, this severely limits the scope and open-endedness of the combat and eliminates so many options that you had available to you in Combat Evolved, which was one of the best features about said game. Number 3. Dual wielding. Dual wielding was a feature promoted and emphasized by Bungie during Halo 2's marketing campaign, but now that we actually have the game, we find out that dual wielding isn't exactly the greatest thing since sliced bread. Only small arms weapons can be dual wielded, so that limits your options to the pistol, SMG, plasma pistol, plasma rifle, brute plasma rifle, and needler. That being said, you can wield any combination of 2 of these weapons, most of which are completely useless and or unavailable to you. Done with the right combination of weapons, you can essentially double your firepower. The downside to dual wielding is that you have no access to your grenades, and to switch to your secondary weapon or use your grenades, you have to drop one of the weapons that you're dual wielding first. Meleeing enemies also automatically makes you drop one of your weapons, and when it comes to weapons that use ammo, meaning the UNSC weapons or the Needler, your reload speed is halved when dual wielding, even if you only reload one weapon at a time. Because only one dual wieldable weapon in the entire game is headshot capable, you will rarely choose to dual wield weapons in Halo 2, aside from the occasional dual magnums, dual plasma rifles, Needlers, or the plasma pistol combo. Number 4. Enemies fire where they last saw you. This is a big one, and fortunately it's fairly self-explanatory. Enemies will blindly fire at the location where they last saw you, despite not being able to see you there any longer. Sounds simple enough, but the implications are far more profound. Normally, when you stick your head out to aim at an enemy, the enemy takes a fraction of a second to recognize your presence, target you, and then start shooting. This amount of time is hard-coded into the game and is lower on higher difficulties. But when enemies are already firing where they last saw you, if you stick your head out in that same spot, this delay is completely negated. Just look at this. If I intentionally attract the attention of these elites, it takes 20 frames, or 2/3 of a second, for them to start firing at me. It's not long, but it's definitely noticeable. Now imagine if this time was reduced to 0 seconds, and you'll get an idea of how much of a difference this mechanic makes. Number 5. Ally weapon swapping. This is quite possibly the single greatest mechanic ever introduced to Halo. Those of you that are familiar with my walkthroughs know that I absolutely love this mechanic and take advantage of it whenever I can. Here's the deal. When you walk up to an ally such as a Marine, you now have the option to hold X to take their weapon. If you choose to do so, their weapon appears in your hand, and here's the important part, the weapon you are currently holding appears in their hands. This is somewhat inconsequential if you trade a Marine a battle rifle for their SMG, but what if, instead, you take a Marine's SMG while carrying a rocket launcher yourself? You end up with a Marine armed with a rocket launcher. And the best part about this is that when NPCs carry weapons, they have infinite ammo, never need to reload, and have superhuman aiming abilities. There are only a few weapons in the game that Marines cannot carry. The Brute Shot, Energy Sword, and possibly the Sentinel Beam, but you never have Marines with you anytime that you encounter Sentinels in the game. But with that being said, when you have Elites as allies, they're capable of carrying all of the above weapons that Marines can't. In addition to that, you can only swap weapons with an ally if the weapon in your hands has at least one shot remaining. If it's completely empty, you can't trade. Also, if you try to trade weapons while dual wielding, you will only be able to trade the weapon in your right hand. If the weapon you receive is not a weapon capable of being dual wielded, you'll also drop the weapon in your left hand. Number 6. Vehicle boarding. The last major feature introduced in Halo 2 that I want to cover is the ability to hijack vehicles. This was even advertised in Halo 2's E3 trailer just like dual wielding, but unlike dual wielding, vehicle boarding is a bit more useful. If you approach any enemy-controlled, drivable vehicle in the game, you'll be prompted to hold X to board said vehicle. You'll then jump onto the vehicle while it's moving, and either eject or kill the driver and then take control of the vehicle yourself. The only downside to this ability is the fact that you have to survive getting close enough to the vehicle to board it, which oftentimes is not possible due to other enemies shooting at you. While you're on foot, you're also very vulnerable to being splattered or shot by the vehicle you're going after. Remember, the plasma pistol did not gain the ability to stall vehicles with its EMP shot until Halo 3, so in Halo 2, there's no way to temporarily disable a vehicle so that you can board it more easily. In my experience though, I really only use vehicle boarding as a last resort in the campaign, because anytime that you find yourself going up against vehicles, you'll have a vehicle of your own or a rocket launcher to take them out more safely than trying to board them. Well, that's just about going to wrap up this episode of Hokie's School of Halo 2. I hope you enjoyed it, I hope you learned something, and I hope you'll join me for the next episode where I'm going to be taking a more in-depth look at the UNSC weapons. Until then, I'm Hokie Bird, and I'm out. See you later, guys.